Offensive lineman Ethan Piper also spoke to the media and was asked who the leader in the offensive line room is.
Cam, out of everyone, he's probably the focal point center, him and Matt Sichterman, but Cam is a person that comes to practice every day and demands every rep to be perfect. If you screw up, he'll let you know.
In Major League Baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers are finalizing a deal with all-star pitcher Cole Hamels. Tonight, the Royals will try to bounce back against the White Sox. Just after 6 p.m., the Yankees host the Orioles, and the Dodgers will try to top the Astros after being shut out last night 3-0. And lastly, in the NFL, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving defensive coordinator Todd Bowles a 3-year contract extension that'll make him the highest-paid defensive coordinator in the NFL. For your latest sports news and updates, keep it tuned right here to 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
And here we go.
You're in the Recruiting Hour on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
You're the 2 o'clock.
Yes, I am.
Here are your hosts, Mike Schaefer and Connor Happer. Brought to you by Bubbles and Blocks.
Welcome into the Recruiting Hour. Mike Schaefer, Connor Happer here on 93.7 The Ticket. Another glorious day in which we were able to watch practice. We will have some thoughts on that. Mitch Sherman will be joining the show at 2:30. I have invented a new game called Guess Set Program, where I will take anonymous quotes, which are pretty bland, from other Big Ten coaches about other Big Ten programs, and Happer will have to guess which program is which.
Okay.
There is one for each program. I honestly think that's how we're gonna.
Oh, it's like a matching game.
Yeah, we're basically gonna start the show doing that. Though I do want to more or less have a new segment on days in which we have media availabilities, which is called the Kool-Aid sip of the day.
Ooh.
So that way
I have lots.
Or maybe Kool-Aid pour of the day, I guess, if we will. And we can each share of, because I feel like this offseason has been pretty rough for some people, particularly the folks that feel like NIL and the one-time transfer is going to ruin college football. And I don't know if this will help those people feel better. But for those that have been pretty down on their football program, they will at least feel a little better maybe about Nebraska, drink some of that Kool-Aid, enjoy some of it. So I will go with this one today. Matt Sichterman, when talking about Henry Lutovsky, referred to him as the strongest player on the team at one point in time, and then said one of the strongest players on the team, and then continued on to say basically he's jealous that Henry Lutovsky's in way better shape and way more likely to contribute early on than he ever was. And he just couldn't stop talking about Henry Lutovsky and how good he is. Also, and this isn't really the Kool-Aid portion of it, it's more of like that would be a lot of beef in one house. He lives in the same house with Lutovsky and Prohaska and Brock Bando and Hunter Miller. There's a 5 offensive lineman.
How many gallons
house.
of milk do you think they go through?
I wanted to just sort of get into the grocery details, and then how many bathrooms do you actually have? It just 5 offensive linemen in a house feels like too many.
It does.
I feel like you should probably
Ask
really
about
only seek to have 2 or 3 offensive linemen
Could have
in one
asked
dwelling.
about the structural integrity of the house, how it's holding up.
I mean, I would hope that it's just a ranch, but we'll see. Maybe it's a second level. I don't know. But Matt Sichterman was very, very strong with praise for Henry Lutovsky. And so that's not necessarily something for this upcoming season, but certainly that's a name that people should get familiar with. Sichterman isn't going to be Nebraska's starting guard forever. He never actually has been. So he's trying to hold that job for right now. And he feels really good about where he's at. And he actually, it was a really interesting interview. He kind of went through Turner Corcoran, and he basically said one of his challenges as someone who's embraced kind of a leadership role despite not having been a starter is to get across to a guy like Turner Corcoran that players before him, Brendan Hymas, Nick Gates, kind of hit a wall early in their careers. They played as freshmen, which is what Turner Corcoran did last year.
Yeah.
And then they hit a bit of a early peak where they felt like they had kind of made it because they were already starting so young, and they didn't necessarily get better in the same trajectory that they should have, and they had to kind of break through that. And so he was talking about how he wants Turner Corcoran to not kind of fall into that lapse, to be able to continue to push through, because there was times where Nick Gates and Brendan Hymas, especially Hymas, it felt like 2018, 2019, both years he started kind of slow before finishing strong. And I think that's kind of what Matt Sichterman was trying to drill home with a guy like Turner Corcoran. So pretty interesting conversation today. We're going to have an opportunity to talk about a lot of those. What was your Kool-Aid of the day?
Ooh, I have
Your
lots
sip of the day.
I have lots to pick from.
Not sponsored by Steve Sipple.
I was keeping a close eye on wide receivers and running backs, and I knew that was going to kind of be the topic of the day.
Well, and the receivers, several spoke. 3 of them, I think, spoke after. You had Levi Falk.
Oh, I didn't know that Levi Falk talked.
Yeah, he was away from you. Like
Mhm.
he was at the far point.
Mhm.
You had to go down the concourse a little bit to find him.
Gotcha.
Xavier Betts and William Nixon.
Yes. So I could pick probably any one of those guys. Let's go with Betts. Since I talked about it earlier, I just think that of the wide receivers, and Omar Manning obviously gets talked about because there's a question mark there, but there's also an awesome piece of physicality, and he's, just looking at him is, you could start daydreaming about the Nebraska offense. And Samori Toure, and we know what kind of he's going to bring, although we find out more and more kind of every day about what he's going to bring. But Betts, to me, out of that group, is the guy who is the most natural wide receiver. He moves so gracefully, effortlessly, catches the ball in that way too. It was always about, and we saw this unfold a little bit in the spring, it was always about kind of making sure he was continuing to push and making sure he was in the right place mentally. And I think we were worried about that a little bit in spring from what we saw in the spring game, for what we saw in that open practice. It just felt like he wasn't quite there with that top group. And the things that he said today, now it's just words, but the things that he said today made me feel like he's going to be a big factor.
Yeah, I mean, he sort of represents the kind of accountability that they've talked about a little bit. I mean, I wrote about it. I actually have a story up on Husker 24/7. I know we have audio clips that we can play a little bit of it. So if any of this happens, sounds like you've got it ready to roll. But he more or less talked about how in the spring he didn't get the opportunities, or he didn't have the reps because he didn't deserve them. He wasn't putting in the work necessary. And so I think it's good that he was able to acknowledge that. And then he talked about how he kind of had an attitude shift this summer and decided that he needed to, if he was going to get something out of this experience. And so Nebraska's better off for it. He's better off for it. To kind of add to what you said, from a talent standpoint, I think that Xavier Betts is the most naturally gifted wide receiver I've seen Nebraska bring in my time covering this team. Now, they haven't brought in a ton of absolute stars, but they've had guys like Jordan Westerkamp, Stanley Morgan, Quincy Enunwa was a freshman, I think, in 2010, would have been one of my first years covering the team. And Kenny Bell was obviously a productive wide receiver. I mean, they've had guys that have played the position well, but I think from just his natural gifts and then his body size, because he's a bigger dude, he has the chance to be really special. He just can't get lazy, and it sounds like he sort of did this spring, and he got called out on it, and he could have went 2 ways with his response, and he went the way that says, I got to work harder, and people have noticed that.
Here he is today.
I know one thing for sure that I haven't realized is my size, because especially when I'm going against some of our shorter DBs or even some of our bigger ones, I have a little bit of a size advantage on them, but I don't use it. So once I get that down and start using that to my advantage, I think I might be able to really realize it a little bit more.
So that's physically. How about the approach?
I'd say my desire to get better has grown a lot more since the spring. In the spring, it was there, but it wasn't as big and as deep as it should have been. And just over the summer, I kind of found ways to improve that. So from then to now, it's just I want to get better more.
That's big. I think it's big. Once again, just words. We'll see how it plays itself out on the field. But if you can count on him being out there, then everybody else's job just gets a lot. I mean, Will Nixon was talking about today, and I think Matt Lubick echoed the same thing, how they go 3 deep at each position.
Yeah. They have a lot of bodies at wide receiver. What they
Like,
need to figure out is if they can have a lot of production there too.
I'm just not really worried about it anymore. I don't know. I still want to see it,
Yeah.
but I just think there's enough talented guys where I'm not really going to think about it as a question mark anymore.
No, I think that's fair.
Especially with the tight ends too.
I think they have a lot of pass catchers. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be productive, but they have those guys there. And so we should be seeing them on the field on Saturday against Illinois.
Yeah.
You should see them somewhat in waves. I mean, if you just sit and name off some of those players, I mean, you start with Samori Toure, who seems to be the unquestioned number one at wide receiver. Where he lines up on the field, it's actually probably more interesting than how he lines up with the rest of that group.
Yep.
Because he seems so much further ahead. And then I feel like I have yet to hear a wide receiver or Matt Lubick not mention Oliver Martin. I continue to be very excited about him. I mean, he's the highest rated of any of these wide receivers they have on their roster. He's the highest rated wide receiver Nebraska's had on its roster if you go by recruiting rankings. Now, obviously, he didn't commit to Nebraska, but he's ended up there. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, you have the other OM and the one that people are really excited about in Omar Manning, and I continue to be maybe a little bit more guarded than I probably have to be, but until we see him on the field and continuously out there making plays against Illinois or Fordham or Buffalo, then I'll start to maybe go a little bit more of that. But Xavier Betts, William Nixon, and then you dive into some guys like Levi Falk and Wyatt Lever, whose names come up continuously, whether it's scholarship guys, whether it's Matt Lubick, whether it's offensive linemen. I mean, there's a reason, like, people push back against it, and it's like, oh, they must not have any wide receivers if these are the guys that are playing. Well, no, they're earning these reps. They're doing what's being asked of them.
Well, that may have been the case in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was the case last year.
And so throw in the fact that to Betts' his own words, I mean, he didn't know the offense last year.
Betts didn't
he
know the
couldn't
offense.
get on the field because he had to keep asking questions as to what he was doing.
Betts didn't know the offense. Manning wasn't there.
Nixon
Toure
was
wasn't
hurt.
there. Nixon was hurt.
Yep.
And all four of those guys are above the, basically the two main targets from last year, which is Falk and Lever at wide receiver in particular. And then we haven't even got to Alante Brown.
Right. And I was just going to say that the one guy I haven't heard much of yet, but I wouldn't get worried about it, is Alante Brown. And then you have three freshman wide receivers that are all pretty physically put together at this point, at being 18 years old and just showing up. I mean, Kamati Grimes is a physical guy.
The guy
that see it.
The two that really popped out of the three were Neville and Grimes.
Yeah, and Neville was a big workout guy who actually had to slim down going into his senior year of high school, and Kamati Grimes was being recruited to play linebacker. So, from a physical standpoint, those guys already have it. So I'm with you as it relates to the wide receivers, and I have moved. Last year I was very concerned about the wide receivers, and I have moved fully into my concern sits with running backs, and it felt like Nebraska got a little bit of good news with running back today.
Yeah.
Certainly with Marquise Stepp out there, and I watched him in some of the drills that they were doing with the running backs, and he was cutting, turning, moving upfield, running full speed. Like, it didn't look limited. And Matt Lubick said as much when he talked to the media as well. And I think Marquise Stepp, if he is full go and ready to go, I think he gives Nebraska their number one option at running back. With Gabe Ervin as a close number two. And if those are the two guys that are established, you ride them. And then if you have to have someone else, they fill in after that.
Maybe it's the other way. Maybe
it could be Gabe Ervin.
Maybe it's
it
Ervin.
Could be Marquise Stepp too. Marquise Stepp certainly fits more of a specialty role, if you will, closer to the goal line or short yardage. And Ervin had a fantastic spring. So we'll see how that plays out. I'd still probably bet on Stepp getting initially the lion's share of the work.
I wouldn't at this point. I would go the other way.
Well, because of the injury, I mean, it could just be very well split. I mean, you could get 10 or 12 carries for each in the first couple of weeks, and they see how it establishes. But it does feel like there's a gap now between those two and maybe the other of the 3, 4, 5 running backs. If we're going all the way down to Cooper Jewett behind him. So pretty good day as far as it relates from the offense. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's been any sort of bummer news yet or any real reason for concern. I mean, I'll get this out of the way now. We don't have to dwell on it because, again, I don't know what exactly they were attempting to do. Nebraska was doing some kickoff stuff right at the beginning of practice, and nobody made it past the 5-yard line. I don't know if
had a little wind coming at him.
A little wind, but not
a little wind, a noticeable wind coming at him. I mean, I'm not
nothing
the wind
more
will
than
be
they're going
there.
to get on a normal game.
The wind
day.
will be there in the fall. I'm just adding context.
Right. And again, I don't know if they were attempting to kick it into the end zone or if they wanted to purposely, because sometimes it's a strategy, you leave it short. However, generally, if you're leaving it short, you're not putting it right down the middle and leaving it short, which is what was happening more often than not. Mm-hmm. So that's your anti-Kool-Aid of the day.
Boo.
Yes. Boo. So, all right. I hinted at this. I'm excited about it. We're going to shift gears. We're going to talk a little Big Ten football, but doing it anonymously. Athlon Sports, I think, does this for every conference, and they do it each year right after media days. They scrub quotes from coaches about other schools, so you don't know who said it. And most of the time, they're fairly bland. You get very little like cheap shots or anything like that, as you might expect if names are scrubbed. But there are 14 quotes in here. We're going to see how many Happer can correctly assign to a team. So I'm going to just run through at random and pick these. All right, we'll start with this one. Here's the quote. They could easily win the division, which is remarkable given some of the talk about this staff and program.
Okay, so I have to identify who they're talking about?
Yes, the program of which they're talking about. Each quote is assigned to a specific program.
And this is another coach?
Yes,
from
an anonymous coach from the Big Ten.
Gotcha.
And part of what I'm doing here is showing how, like, this quote could be assigned to several different programs.
Yeah.
So it's not super specific.
Let's say that one's about Nebraska.
It is not. It is about Iowa.
That was my next guess.
They could easily win the division, which is remarkable given some of the talk of this staff and program.
I don't know what the talk is. That seems vague.
That Kirk Ferentz hasn't really turned the page in the last few years, that they're sort of stale. I mean,
that's the talk?
Yeah, outside of the program or outside of, in the Big Ten, Iowa's not regarded for much of anything, and coaches still have those opinions beyond just the Nebraska fan base.
Wow, that's not how I view Iowa. Yeah. That's not how I view Iowa. I view them as a, basically an inch away from doing that, from being that type of team every year.
All right,
it's not in spite of their coaching staff. Yeah. It's not because of their coaching staff that they're falling short either. I don't know what the talk is. I've never heard that.
So here's the next one. I scrubbed the coach's name, so it'll just be Coach X.
Okay.
This is going to be a fascinating team to watch. Coach X is going to try to convince his program everything that went wrong last year can be contained to last year, and I'm not so sure it can be.
Penn State.
Correct.
Yeah.
1 for 2.
Coach X is James Franklin.
Coach X is James Franklin. We'll do the second Coach X. There's only 2 Coach X's in here.
Okay.
This is a huge season for them. If they can't find a reliable starting quarterback, this thing is going to fall apart on Coach X. The buzz they had a few years ago is totally gone.
Purdue.
Correct. 2 for 3.
Coach X is Jeff Brom.
Yes. You are solving the algebra equation.
Yes.
They don't need a complete change, but they have to identify what separates their offensive scheme and their development from the programs they expect to beat. This is not a bad program. This is a good program.
Okay, could you do that one more time?
They don't need a complete change, but they have to identify what separates their offensive scheme and their development from the programs they expect to beat. This is not a bad program. This is a good program.
Nebraska?
No. Do you want a second guess?
Yeah, I do. Northwestern?
No, it is Michigan.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
Defensively, they're a bit of a mess. They need to get back to playing complementary football for their offense.
Minnesota?
Correct.
Yeah.
You're doing pretty good. Your 2 guesses have been ones that sound like Nebraska.
Yeah, but they both weren't.
But they have not been Nebraska.
Yeah.
On paper, they're doing great. The question a lot of us have is how effective can this program be developing players in this league for this league?
Ooh. Maryland?
No.
Rutgers?
It is Rutgers.
Yeah.
This has become a really hard job. Give it time.
Nebraska?
Nope. Illinois.
Illinois. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. What else we
Are
got
these
here?
made up? What is
No,
this?
these are. I'll send you the link. These are quotes that I'm pulling from this article.
They just don't sound like
They're
specific
bland.
at
Like
all.
they're yeah.
Like, but if you're Athlon put this together.
Yep.
If you're Athlon and you go to these coaches and you say, "Look, we're going to give you this anonymously. We're not going to put you in there. Like, why don't
But
you
this-
just go ahead and say something?"
But
And
this
they
goes
still
to the
choose to
nature
say
of
nothing?
coaches. They sound the same. The teams sound the same. Like when you scrub the removal from it, some of it is pretty easy. Like I'll do one for you right now that I'm pretty sure you're going to get. They're never as talented as those other teams, and they keep showing back up. This is as hardworking a program as there is in the game.
Northwestern.
Yeah. Like
But
sometimes
I could have said that.
Right.
That's why I'm getting all these right.
you're not all of them. You're getting some of them.
Doing pretty good.
They were a feel-good story for a lot of staffs and programs that are trying to build it slowly and not cut corners. The administration knew what they had, and they gave him time. And now you see the results.
Indiana.
Correct. They have a high ceiling and a low floor. It could all fall apart on them, or those young guys could explode if that offense clicks. This is going to be a really interesting season for
them. We've done Michigan and we've done Penn State. Ohio State?
No.
I don't know. Who's
They
that?
don't have a low floor.
No, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Maryland.
Maryland. Yeah, that's right. I guess Maryland, but we didn't get Maryland yet. Got it.
I don't think there's any sign of an actual downward trend, just a combination of a strange year and bringing guys along. They need depth at running back, and their receivers are really banged up last year. But again, nothing alarming.
Wisconsin?
Yep. Something isn't matching up inside this program. They don't have a cohesive identity. There are issues related to talent, but the questions all lead straight to the head coach.
Nebraska?
Correct.
Fair assessment.
Yeah, I thought so. I felt like that was fair. They want to be very different, and they want to impose that on the program right away, which means it's going to look a little rough for a while.
They want to be different, and they say it again.
And they want to impose that on the program right away, which means it's going to look rough for a little while.
Michigan State.
Correct. I believe the last one here. I think we've gotten everybody else. Oh, I forgot to get one for this program, probably because there wasn't any that you wouldn't definitively be able to tell that it was Ohio State.
Yeah, right.
All the comments were they're really
just
scary.
the best ever.
They're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Their secondary got exposed by Alabama, but there's two teams in the country that could do that.
Corey,
None of the teams play in the league.
Corey said on the text line, he said, Simple claimed this morning that, and I didn't hear Simple say this, Simple claimed this morning that all these quotes are completely fabricated by Athlon. None of these anonymous quotes actually came from a coach. What do you think? It sounds like it. It's like, I don't know.
So I think they all sound like stuff a coach would say because it all sounds like coach speak for the most part. And they all sort of reinforce the stereotypes you believe in the program already. So I believe that they can be real. I don't think they tell you anything you didn't already know.
Yeah.
Like if you already had a preconceived belief about a program coming into reading this article,
Yeah.
chances are it just played into that.
Well, it's also hard. Like, I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of like, guy comes up to me and he's like, give me your honest 2-sentence assessment of this program. It's just like hard to boil it down to one thing. Maybe if you ask him specific, maybe you just like, maybe the question is like, look, we're going to do this anonymously. I need you to talk trash on every head coach. Like, what's a thing that you hate?
And very few of it was talking trash. I mean, the closest you got was sort of
what's a thing
some
you hate?
questions about Jeff Brom, basically. Like, is there anything behind sort of the
there was
flash of 2
Nebraska.
years
It
ago?
all came
And
back
then-
to the coach.
Right. And then Nebraska, which Scott Frost is a little bit of a sitting target for these things.
Sure.
But I mean, do you want to hear the other ones about Nebraska?
Yeah, I do.
Let's find them. So I think it's time to start talking about the bigger picture here. I don't think anyone expects Scott Frost to be on the hot seat right now. No one is talking about 2021 as a must-win year for them. At least you don't hear that on the recruiting trail. But they're so far from where it's expected to be, that's obvious.
Okay.
You have to start asking some questions. Why are you losing a star player to Kentucky? Your most talented offensive players are jumping ship, and it's because you put their film on and you can't find an identity. This is not the UCF offense. This is not the Frost Oregon offense. I could easily see why people would think these are made up because
I know
there's nothing to them.
Yeah.
And it just reinforces how most people already feel.
Oh, yeah, exactly. All these things have already been said.
Yeah. Here's another one. Adrian Martinez is a great athlete, but he's not going to blow you away as a pure thrower, and his decision-making isn't always great. Anonymous quote.
I think they just took them from listening to a couple hours.
It feels
of
like they listen to sports talk radio. Yeah. The sports talk in each town. That's what it should be.
That's probably what they did.
Right now, they can't claim to be a developer of NFL talent. A few years ago, they had 3 defensive linemen at the scouting combine, and that was after a year they couldn't stop anyone's running game. I described their defensive personnel as world beaters on the hoof. They look the part before the game. They're not elite yet, but they had their best year last season for sure, and they play the run really well. So it was weirdly complimentary. I didn't really follow
that. Was a roller coaster.
And then the quote about something isn't matching up inside this program.
I do remember when they had Malik Collins, Vincent Valentine, and was like Greg McMullen at the combine?
No, they're talking about the Davis twins and Darian Daniels.
Oh, gotcha.
Because that was 2 years ago.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Even though, it was literally the combine of 2020. So it wasn't like, it made it seem like this was 5 years ago and it was.
They could stop the run. Nebraska could stop the run.
In 2020, they were still giving up 4.8 or 5.0 yards per run?
Yeah, it was
2019, excuse me.
Oh, 2019. Yeah, they were still over 5, I think.
Yeah, or close to it. It was like 4.8.
Yeah. Last year was better. They were only giving up like 5.
Last year they were borderline good against the run.
Yeah, they were only giving up like 5 yards per play. Now, a part of the reason why they were so good, I mentioned this yesterday, was, do you remember this? They gave up -2 yards rushing against Purdue last year.
That skewed the stats in a small season.
But then they also didn't have a non-con. Right. So it just gets really, really confusing about what the stats
I felt like last year's stats were the most accurate that you're going to get because you were only going against conference teams. But then they were also the least accurate because of the weird nature of
they weren't. You can't compare them to any other years and look at it because they don't make sense anymore when you take out the non-conference games. So I thought there was a sizable, jump for last year's defense. But it didn't really show up that way in the stats. But I just felt like they were better. Last year, you just kind of had to go off feel.
And it's just, but like I said, it's also hard because you had such weird years for your opponents, too. You lost a game against Wisconsin, so you have no stats there. You have Minnesota was clearly not what they should have been based on.
But they still ran
that game. They ran the ball successfully.
Yep.
So, all right, let's take a break. We will come back. We'll have Mitch Sherman. We'll get his thoughts on what he saw, what he heard today at practice, and how things are shaping up for Nebraska football here in 2021.
You're listening to the Recruiting Hour with Mike Schaefer and Connor Happer on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Did you know that Myers Cork and Bottle is still open for walk-in business, but is now also offering citywide delivery? Learn more or place your order by calling 476-1518. And be sure to listen to Thirsty Thursday with Myers Cork and Bottle every Thursday at 4:30 on The Drive.
Listening to this Allstate commercial about savings might be the hardest thing about getting those savings. Save for simply becoming an Allstate customer. Save more for adding DriveWise. And save even more for driving safely. Visit Allstate.com or contact your local agent for a quote today. Allstate. Minimum effort, maximum reward.
Not available in every state. New customer savings based on early signing discount. DriveWise is an optional feature. Savings vary based on how you buy. Subject to terms and conditions. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
New owners means new lunch specials at the Fox Bar and Grill. They've just introduced tons of options on their new under $10 lunch menu. Small nachos grande, a classic cheeseburger, 4 boneless or traditional wings and fries, or a small single topping pizza for just $5 each. Try the mushroom Swiss burger or the pepper jack stack burger for just $6. And for just $7, try any of the classic steak Philly, club wrap, grilled chicken salad, or grilled southwestern salad. It's the under $10 lunch menu at the Fox Bar and Grill, just south of 14th and Pine Lake.
Summertime is here and the temperature is rising. Beat the heat at Pawnee Plunge Water Park in Columbus all summer long. Pawnee Plunge features a full day of fun for the whole family, including the Flow Ride, the only one in Nebraska, a large swimming pool, diving boards, a lazy river, climbing wall, and of course, massive water slides. It's a great place for parties or a great spot to lounge around all day long. Book your party by calling 402-562-4269. Come splash and play the Pawnee Plunge Way in Columbus from May 31st through August 8th. Mike Schaefer here with 5-star childcare provider Lee Beecher from Bubbles and Blocks. Let's start with what makes Bubbles and Blocks special.
We have 3 beautiful locations in Lincoln that provide the safety, security, and reliability you need while also bringing a family feel to each classroom at every location.
I also hear some congratulations are in order.
Thank you. Yes, we just won the Lincoln Choice Award for Best Daycare and Preschool for the 3rd year in a row.
What should people do if they want to join the Bubbles and Blocks family?
Call to set up a tour to enroll your child today, or you can visit bubblesandblocks.com to apply to join our team.
93.7 The Ticket. Fox KFXL weather. Sponsored by Security First Bank. A relationship you can count on.
Cloud cover will move in by later in the day, but we'll top out near 88 for the high with a south wind at around 15 to 20. We'll see a slight chance of thunderstorms this evening with better chances out to the west. Overnight low tonight of around 67. We'll see an isolated chance of thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon with a high near 90. I'm meteorologist Tim Wright for 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Deck City is Lincoln's DIY deck headquarters. With real deck professionals, they can help you throughout the entire process. They also offer financing for qualified customers. Deck City offers the best quality materials so you have a deck built to last. There's everything from Yellowwood lumber to the best quality TimberTech composites on the market and high-quality aluminum railings by Westbury or Diamond Piers for easy footing install. For those looking to bring your wood deck back to life, they offer good-proof, ready seal stain. Deck City, your deck material headquarters, is now open Saturdays from 9 to 1, 2 blocks north of 33rd and Cornhusker Highway.
Baseball's back, and it's time to celebrate, Lincoln. We're inviting fans back to Haymarket Park to join in the fun for the Salt Dogs 20th season. Pick out single game tickets and plot your own Salt Dog schedule around promos and deals. Come to Haymarket Park for Nebraska Medical Association Thank You Tuesdays, Fairbury brand Wiener Wednesdays, Thirsty Thursdays, Fireworks Fridays, Souvenir Saturdays, and Sunday Family Fun Days brought to you by Casey's. Get your tickets for the Salt Dogs celebration season at saltdogs.com.
At Buffalo Wings and Rings, they've crafted a new league of superior chicken sandwiches. Meet the Ringers. It's premium, house-made, beer-battered, fried chicken served buffalo, Korean, or MVP style. Head to Buffalo Wings and Rings Lincoln and raise a glass to superior chicken. 2 locations at 68th and O and at 40th and Old Cheney. Buffalo Wings and Rings.
Back to the Recruiting Hour with Mike Schaefer and Connor Happer. Presented by Bubbles and Blocks. On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Hour. Mike Schaefer, Connor Happer here on 93.7 The Ticket, and our coverage of Nebraska's fall camp rolls along. We're going to welcome in from the Athletic Mitch Sherman, who returned from vacation this week to jump right back into Nebraska coverage. Mitch, how you doing?
I'm good, Mike. Yeah, it's refreshing to be back and unusual to miss the opening press conference as I did last Thursday, but got to get that vacation time in because I won't have another opportunity until what, February?
Yep. We're all on that cycle. I did it where I came back in right for Big Ten Media Days. You did it where you came back in right for a practice. I mean, I feel like that's the way to do it. Like, you don't, if you just go straight back into it, you don't have time to wonder about how you could enjoy more vacation or anything else. You're just busy with work right away.
Or I don't have time to wonder about what disservice I did to my readers by missing out on last week. I did go back and make sure that I poured over the audio tapes of everything that happened last Thursday at Memorial Stadium that I missed while I think we were at SeaWorld last Thursday in San Diego. And, it sounded a lot like what I heard in Indy at Big Ten Media Days. So
Yeah.
I wasn't too disappointed to miss it. Although the quarterback was there. So looking forward, I suppose, next week to getting to chat with him.
I know this isn't what you meant, but I initially took that as SeaWorld sounded a lot like Big Ten Media Days, which was funny to me. And I kind of want to just keep it that way. Mitch, Monday, you and I were both over with the linebackers, and you wrote something for The Athletic that I thought was pretty good. And it talked about how there's been some mental growth from this group, and especially, Garrett Nelson as well. You were over as I was for that interview. And I was kind of struck by how introspective he got with how much the mental side has really stood out for him at this juncture in his career. Were you a little surprised by that, given by what we know of Garrett Nelson?
Well, every experience I've had with Garrett Nelson in the last 3 seasons now, I guess, including this one, well, the last 2 seasons, because I'm not including this one. He was different this time. It's all been, fire breathing out of his mouth, and how can he fire everybody up as much as he possibly can? He's going to run through a brick wall. I think he literally would try to run through a brick wall if it was put in front of him. Usually that's said in the figurative sense, but not necessarily with Garrett. And I was struck, as you were, I think, Mike, in how it was like this toned down, more mellow version of Garrett Nelson. And we got toward the end of the interview, and I asked him about that. I said, you don't seem to be as excitable as usual. What's going on? And he talked about seeing a sports psychologist and how he was going to be every bit as fiery on the field when the ball is snapped, but he determined, or it was helped to determine that it's best that he not have that approach in every moment of his life. That maybe that would, that would slow him down a little bit when it was time to go get the quarterback. And I thought that was mature, and it's important for him to be able to see things from that perspective, because when he got here, it was all about how hard and fast and loud can I go every minute of every day.
With Garrett Nelson, and really that linebacker group in general, you have Luke Reimer, you have Nick Henrich, they're all part of that 2019 class. I mean, do you sort of perceive that to be maybe among the guys that you anticipate to break out in terms of this defense? I mean, we sort of know what some of the older pieces are, but there's still always that next level. Some of these guys are going to get extended run. Some of them, like Garrett Nelson, he talked about how the game sort of slowed down for him towards the end of last year, and we saw his production go up when that happened. Do you anticipate that there's more that these guys can do than in the limited glimpses we've seen of Reimer, Nelson, and Henrich so far?
Yeah, I mean, Henrich for sure. And it was interesting that he wasn't one of the guys who came and did interviews, but he was probably the one who got talked about the most.
Yeah.
By the coaches and by teammates. I was really interested to hear Luke Reimer say that Henrich is the leader of that group, and as he goes, they go. And I think they really respect the fact that he came in, coming back from injury where he was really limited in 2019 and his ability to even get on the practice field, and then took on a role where he was playing outside and inside, and had moments last year where you could just really see him flash. And, the thought was, okay, they need to find a spot for this guy. Don't keep him in this situation where you're moving him around and you have him play outside one month and then inside the next because there's an injury. I think Nebraska really needs to avoid the temptation to just kind of fit him into the hole that's needed. He needs a home. He needs a place where he can stay and he can develop and prosper, because he's one of those guys with an extremely high ceiling, who can be an all conference kind of player. So yeah, I think he's definitely positioned, and maybe it's this year, maybe it's even further down the road, to really break out. With the other two, we've seen more of it. Reimer, you could argue broke out last year, although it wasn't consistent. he definitely had moments where he looked like the best defensive player on the field for Nebraska. Maybe rare moments, but it's there. And then with Nelson, it's just kind of harnessing that fire. And I think the production will come. But I think we know what kind of a player he is. He's and now that he's 260 pounds, he can wrangle with some offensive linemen and get his hand in the ground. And I think he can be an effective pass rusher. I don't know that he's like the splash kind of pass rusher that maybe Feldarius Payne could be, or the kind of guy that Nebraska wants who can dominate a game. But he can be really solid, and he's definitely moving in that direction.
Has there been a player that has been talked about that has kind of made you go, I wasn't expecting that, or it has maybe changed the way that you think about said player? I mean, because I know so much of what this is over the last week since these guys have come back and started working is we're hearing, and they're talking about what they're seeing and that kind of thing. We don't know how it always translates when you get into the actual game or into the actual season. But has there been a name that has popped up that you've kind of had to think about a little bit differently over these first couple days?
Well, I mentioned Henrich, so him. I would say Xavier Betts, and we got to hear from Xavier today. It was a little disappointing not to hear more about Xavier in the spring. And the first question I asked him today was what held him back physically in the spring. And he didn't take that softball. He said it wasn't so much a physical thing. It was more just him not being as focused as he should have been. And I think it's big for a guy who's still only been on campus for 1 year to be able to recognize that. And that now going into his second year, he's still a freshman in terms of eligibility. So there's plenty of time for him to continue to grow as a player. And he had a decent first year. Caught 12 balls, which is admirable in 8 games for a true freshman receiver, but have heard a lot of mention about him. And, he didn't necessarily come out of the spring as one of the top 3 guys at receiver. And I don't know that he goes into August 28th in the starting lineup, but I think he's definitely put himself in position to be in that second group. And those guys are going to get reps. Matt Lubick talked today about the desire to play at least 6 deep and 2 deep across the board, 6 deep, and, in 3+3. And maybe even deeper than that. And I think Xavier fits comfortably into that second group of 3. And, if there's an injury or he plays well, he may find himself in the starting lineup at some point this year. So that's been refreshing. That's been really good because he was a guy that I had pretty high hopes for coming out of Bellevue West. Maybe another guy, is Travis Vokolek. Nebraska's been featuring him quite a bit and making him available for interviews, which is generally a pretty good indication of how the coaches feel about a guy. He had not necessarily limited opportunities last year, but didn't get a ton of balls to catch last season. And to hear him grouped with Austin Allen the way that Lubick and Sean Beckton did today, in the same sentence, and saying that both of those guys, not just Allen, but both of those guys are big time prospects and can play in the NFL sooner rather than later, was eye opening to me too. So, I think he's a guy who on the offensive side could have a breakout year.
One of the things that Happer and I discussed at the beginning of this show today, and coming off of Matt Lubick talking about him, coming off of just kind of watching on the field, you had Marquise Stepp we saw out there, and it looked like he was healthy. And of course, Gabe Ervin was the talk of spring ball. Do you feel like there's a gap between those two and the rest of that running back room? Do you think it's kind of been settled that one of those 2 guys is ultimately who Nebraska would like to be sort of the workhorse for them in 2021?
Well, I want to see about a week from now what they're saying about Marquise Stepp. And I know his injury probably isn't one where contact drills are necessarily going to be more dangerous. If it was a shoulder or something where he goes into contact and you could re-injure it, then maybe this next week would be really, you need to be really cautious. But with a foot injury, he could just as easily re-injure it in a workout where you don't even have pads on as he could in full contact tomorrow. So that's encouraging that they've gone full speed with him for this first week. In knowing the kind of injury that he's coming off, I don't think it's necessarily all that much more dangerous for him to put the full pads on. If somebody steps on his foot, I suppose that's a problem, but it could happen today as easily as it could tomorrow. The pads probably don't matter. So still, that said, I want to see him maybe get halfway through camp or even up to game week where he's still taking a lot of reps before I feel like he's one of the top two for sure. And there's a gap behind him and another guy. But if he's healthy, then yeah, I think he is in that position. I think with his experience at USC and just knowing there's more known about him as a high level Power 5 running back than anybody else on this roster. And then Irvin has been the most consistent probably since January, just the guy who's been out there in workouts and in spring practice every day doing all the things right. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that potentially if Steph is healthy, that there is a little bit of separation with those two. And, I would have maybe said Jacquez Yant was putting himself in position to be in that spot too. And I don't have reason to believe that he isn't after 5 practices. I mean, he got the scholarship this offseason, so they feel good about him if they're going to give him that. But he didn't get a lot of mention today from Lubick. And I don't want to read too much into that. Maybe Ryan Held talks next week and he gushes about Jacquez Yant, but I haven't heard as much about him so far here in the fall as we did in the spring. But again, it's just 5 practices.
All right, Mitch. Hey, we appreciate your time as always, and we'll, I'm sure, have you on right before the season starts or as the season is rolling. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mitch.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We're going to finish up the show next on The Recruiting Hour.
You're listening to The Recruiting Hour with Mike Schaefer and Connor Happer on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
The decision to replace your air conditioner will save or waste money for 15 to 20 years. Bryant offers some of the most efficient ACs available, up to 26 a year. Schedule your free estimate at BryantLincoln.com.
Summertime is here and the temperature is rising. Beat the heat at the Pawnee Plunge Water Park in Columbus all summer long. Pawnee Plunge features a full day of fun for the whole family, including the flow ride, the only one in Nebraska, a large swimming pool, diving boards, a lazy river, climbing wall, and of course, massive water slides. It's a great place for parties or a great spot to lounge around all day long. Book your party by calling 402-562-4269. Come splash and play the Pawnee Plunge Way in Columbus from May 31st through August 8th.
At Koppel, you can shop online for the most affordable crossovers, SUVs, cars, and trucks. They have new Chevrolet and GMC or used inventory, all at your fingertips. Hi, I'm Sean Callahan, and before I got my car at Koppel, I shopped online at koppelcars.com. I found a vehicle I liked, then I drove that money-saving mile to Koppel in Louisville. You should too. It was just minutes from I-80 or at koppelcars.com.
Hi, Andy Neal of Cartridge World. We are not a big box store that sells everything and specializes in nothing. Cartridge World is your local expert when it comes to streamlining office printing and scanning. No big box can match our proven no-cost lease program. We customize solutions that supply you with multifunction printers and all the required service just for buying cartridge roll, ink, and toner at a 30% savings. Call for a no-cost consultation, 464-3455, or go online to cartridgeworld.com.
Allo provides so much more. Safer screen time, more of the channels you love, and real peace of mind. Take it from Richard in Lincoln, who gets more with Allo.
The internet is twice as fast as competitors, and the whole package is saving me $60 per month. As a retired veteran, this extra money is fantastic.
So switch to Allo today. Go to allofiber.com/providing more.
Deck City is Lincoln's DIY deck headquarters. With real deck professionals, they can help you throughout the entire process. They also offer financing for qualified customers. Deck City offers the best quality materials so you have a deck built to last. There's everything from yellowwood lumber to the best quality TimberTech composites on the market and high quality aluminum railings by West Ferry or Diamond Piers for easy footing install. For those looking to bring your wood deck back to life, they offer good proof ready seal stain. Deck City, your deck material headquarters, is now open Saturdays from 9 to 1, 2 blocks north of 33rd and Cornhusker Highway.
93.7 The Ticket. Fox KFXL weather. Sponsored by Security First Bank. A relationship you can count on.
Cloud cover will move in by later in the day, but we'll top out near 88 for the high with a south wind at around 15 to 20. We'll see a slight chance of thunderstorms this evening with better chances out to the west. Overnight low tonight of around 67. We'll see an isolated chance of thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon with a high near 90. I'm meteorologist Tim Wright for 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
New owners means new lunch specials at the Fox Bar and Grill. They've just introduced tons of options on their new under $10 lunch menu. Small nachos grande, a classic cheeseburger, 4 boneless or traditional wings and fries, or a small single topping pizza for just $5 each. Try the mushroom Swiss burger or the pepper jack stack burger for just $6. And for just $7, try any of the classic steak Philly, club wrap, grilled chicken salad, or grilled southwestern salad. It's the under $10 lunch menu at the Fox Bar and Grill, just south of 14th and Pine Lake.
Back to the Recruiting Hour with Mike Schaefer and Connor Happer, presented by Bubbles and Blocks on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Hour. One final time here in the 2 o'clock hour. The drive is up next. It's Wednesday. That probably means Michael Bruntz.
Yes.
According to the board over here.
Yes.
What else does Wednesday mean?
Sam McEwen.
Sam McEwen. Why is his name never on the board?
I don't know.
I would say his name.
I wrote that up there.
Granted, I have no names on the Recruiting Hour on my
True.
stretch of things.
True.
And we had Gary Sharp yesterday and Mitch Sherman today. Well, Mike Sauter tomorrow.
Yes.
I assume we'll have Mike Sauter. I don't know. He's now he runs his own media.
Yeah.
Day, so I don't know if he'll actually want to come on our show. I hope he does. So
I hope he does too.
I'll check in to see if he's still willing.
I'm sure he'll find a way to make it happen. If there's
Yeah.
one thing we know about him.
I think so too, and I'm sure there'll be at least like a 3-minute story that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
But is classically Mike Sauter. So
no doubt.
I anticipate that we will have him tomorrow. All right. I asked this of Mitch Sherman. I'm curious if you have any different answers or if there's any other players you want to highlight. Has there been anyone that has popped up so far, whether from coaches or other players, where you're like,
yes,
I wasn't considering that name?
Was I reading this wrong today, or did I hear a little Ramir Johnson buzz?
I wasn't over with Matt Lubick, so I don't know.
He was like the second or third guy that Lubick brought up on the running back thing. And we probably, like Mitch said, we probably looked too much into that.
Oh, yeah.
Like
No
who the guys mentioned and in like what order. But I don't know. It says
But it's also
something.
all we have currently.
It says something that it's a stream of consciousness thing. And I watched all the running backs today, and he looked fluid and smooth. I don't know that it's that much better than he was last year. Like, I didn't notice him being that much better than he was, but if he knows where to be, knows what to do, I mean, he's going to have a chance in this race. They need to find a person. So that's a name that I didn't expect to hear, that I heard mentioned. Let's see. There was maybe a couple. I mean, the obvious one, he was the talk of Monday, Nick Henrich, even though he wasn't there. He was the talk of Monday for sure. Let's see. Was there
Levi
anybody-
Falk and Wyatt Lever come up from their
Every
teammates
time.
a lot?
Yeah.
And again, what people do with that, I don't know. But they've earned a lot of respect. Well, I mean, and Levi Falk doesn't even have to be here. He chose to come back, chose to walk on for another season, to use that extra year of eligibility. And so those guys, just by their virtue of that, they haven't been just completely overtaken by other scholarship players that they've kind of scrapped. That's a good sign.
Okay, how about
you need dudes like that?
Mitch mentioned him too, but I know we talk about it's either we talk about Austin Allen or we talk about Travis Vokolek and Austin Allen, but we never just talk about Travis Vokolek.
Well, remember, Travis Vokolek was supposed to be kind of the breakout last year, and then it turned out to be Austin Allen.
Yeah.
And so then it's kind of like, well, now it's Austin Allen
And Travis Vokolek. Yes.
But mostly we talk about Austin Allen.
Yes. Like I said, we get a lot of Austin Allen talk. We get a lot of Austin Allen and Travis Vokolek talk, but we don't get a lot of Travis Vokolek talk.
And
there's been some Travis Vokolek talk.
I think because he's not that fast, it sort of caps what you think he could do.
He's so big, though.
He's
large.
If you trusted this team to figure out how to throw the ball accurately in the red zone and not off their own offensive line's helmet.
Sean Beckton had he offered some what's the word I'm looking for? Anecdotes on
that wasn't what I was guessing.
Yeah, on just how productive he thinks those tight ends could be today, and
they should be massive weapons in the red zone. I mean, those guys.
you got to do it right, But
quite frankly, Nebraska should have much less issues scoring in the red zone with a potential lineup that includes guys like Austin Allen, Travis Vokalek, Samori Toure.
Not large, but
he's still 6'1", 6'2", and can jump.
So think about it this way: like Toure ends up being the Wandale, and you still have Manning and Betts on the outside who are able to kind of do their own thing and be physically imposing presences.
What do you mean by ends up being the Wandale?
Well, I just think he's the shifty, make guys
Samori
miss guy.
Toure is 6'3", 190.
I know, but I don't think of him as
because you just said he wasn't large, and that's pretty large.
No, I don't think he's large. I mean, so I know the height.
That's bigger than both Stanley Morgan and Quincy Enunwa, height-wise.
Yeah, but like you've seen him, he's not.
He doesn't look
Yeah.
physically imposing.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
He,
all right.
he's not Stanley.
I was getting hung up on the height.
He's not built like Stanley Morgan.
All right.
He's not built like Omar Manning. He's not built like
Yeah.
Xavier Betts.
I guess I've never thought of him as shifty, though.
I think he's the quickest guy that they have in a short area. And I
Quicker
think
than Martin?
Yeah, short area,
Okay.
quick, yeah.
All right.
Like
That's
just making
interesting.
dudes miss,
Okay.
I saw him a couple times over there today, just like boom, one cut, gone. You know,
Yeah.
stuff that Wandale would do.
I have not watched a lot of Samori Toure. I missed, the opportunities this spring. I didn't watch a lot of wide receiver today. So I can't speak. Like when I've watched him, it's just been the film, the highlights of his time at Montana.
Yeah.
And those are more like him just streaking down the field highlights really than anything else.
That is correct.
Right.
yeah.
And so that's really interesting. I'm very curious.
Just watch him next time because
Okay.
it's more of it's more of a short area
burst
guy than I expected him to be.
Okay.
Even though he is, like you said, tall.
Yeah. I just, what I really trying to get at is I feel like they have a lot of options, and we know that Oregon loved to throw the fade. Scott Frost was running that offense when they loved to throw the
fades.
And they haven't really done it a lot here, in part because they really haven't had the receivers to do it with. So
should score more points.
We'll see if that plays out.
Catch
in
more
that fashion.
touchdowns.
So all in all, been a pretty good start, I would say, for Nebraska's fall camp through 5 practices. I've certainly been intrigued, and we'll see how that carries on. We'll be back on Thursday. Happer's sticking around. He's running the drive. You're getting him for 3 more hours.
Early break with